The last thing you want is for something to go wrong with your plumbing, but it happens a lot. And the last thing you want when there's water spraying all over your kitchen or your toilet is overflowing is looking up reviews on which plumber you should call. So let me save you some time. Call the Art of Plumbing. They're always on time. They can locate the problem and fix it right away. They even help with solutions to stop any future problems. Save time. Call the Art of Plumbing today. 541-951-9405.
Hey, come take a walk with me. Not like you used to do. Do something different and put yourself in other people's shoes. Open up your mind and open up your eyes and change your direction, change your perspective.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. As you know, I am your host, Neil Matthews. I feel like we need to go to someplace warm. I don't know about anybody else, but I sometimes feel very chilly this time of year. And so undoubtedly, let's go to a place that I've actually never been. But I've always wanted to go there because they have real grass inside their stadium. Now, you might be thinking, are we going to Vegas? No. No, sir. No, ma'am. We are going to Arizona. That's right. There is no Arizona, but our next guest is going to dispute that with us, I'm sure, right now. Help me welcome her in today. She is an author. She's a speaker. She's a poet. I know that sounds the same, like author, poet. No, but they're different. Trust me. They are so different. She's also a professional. She's a program director. She also does private practice for mental health, and we're going to get into a mental health story. So if you've had some storms of your life in the mental health arena, this is the episode to hang out for. Help me welcome her in from the great state of Arizona, Sandra Rae. Sandra, how are you today?
I am great, Neil. Thank you for that great warm welcome, and it is warm here.
I was just going to say, like in Oregon, if we get above 100 during the summertime, I mean, it's front page news. It's like the lead story. We've broke 100. But like, how often does it get over 100 in the Scottsdale, Tucson kind of area that you're in?
Yeah, this was a weird year. We actually had a number of days that were triple digits, and that was not an oddity. We had that going all the way through October, which normally September, October, we start getting cooler. But nope, we had hundreds way up until Halloween.
That's crazy to me.
Mm-hmm.
So since we are in Arizona, by the way, I'm referencing a country song when I say there is no Arizona. I don't know if anyone knows that song, but my wife and I sang that song in high school. There is no Arizona. Okay, I'm not going to sing. I can't believe I just did that, but it's my own show. I can sing every now and then. But Sandra, if we were going to come down, which would be a quick trip, by the way, I think we can take Legion from Medford to down near your area. In that,
you can.
Tucson, Scottsdale area. So thank you, Legion, for that. So if we were going to fly down there, we wouldn't even have to take first class. But if we were going to come down and visit, where would you take us around town to show us and have a fun time with?
Okay, Neil, that's a tough one now because we're in COVID. So the places that I would take you, it would be hard to do. However,
okay, so pretend that there is no COVID. Can we just for one time pretend there's no COVID?
Yes.
Let's pretend. You and I, let's use our imagination
Yes.
here. All right,
okay,
no
so
COVID.
we're going to go hiking.
Where are we going?
We're going to go hiking, first of all. And then there's great Mexican restaurants down here. So we're going to go to some Mexican restaurants. We're going to go hiking. And then I'm going to put you in the car and we're going to go. And you can pick either north or south. If we go north, we're going to Sedona. Beautiful hills, mountains, wonderful scenery. We can go south to Tucson, where I work. And again, mountains, very green, very different than kind of the Phoenix, Scottsdale area where it tends to be a little bit browner. So we're going to eat some Mexican food. We're going to go hiking and we're going to see beautiful scenery.
So I'm picturing me in having a margarita in hand and a sombrero and me saying, yay, a lot. So just be aware of that. So if I'm not going to embarrass you too much, we will come down and definitely indulge.
That sounds great.
All right. Sounds fun. So let me ask you this most important question. I don't know if you've ever been interviewed or how many times you've been interviewed, but I always tell people, I don't care how many shows you've been on, no one is going to ask you this most important question of all time. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. What style of shoes do you love to wear?
Oh, that is so funny. I've been asked that about 20 times. No, I'm lying. I have not.
I was just going to say, that just broke my heart for a second.
Not.
Like
No, this is very original.
Chair.
My favorite My Converse. I have 4 pairs of Converse, 2 high top, 2 low.
What color are your Converse?
Oh, good question.
Now I'm all excited about your Converse. Like,
Yep.
most ladies come on and they're like, well, we're wearing heels today. We're wearing boot shoes. We're wearing this. We're wearing my stilettos. But you're rocking some Converse.
I got my
That's
Converse.
awesome. I'm loving this.
Yep. Okay, so a white, black, gray, and red.
All right. I mean, that's fun. I mean, I was kind of expecting like a hot pink or like
you would
like
think,
fuchsia.
right? Yeah. Sorry to disappoint, but
That's okay. That's all right. So, so Tucson, last question about where you are. So is that like near the Arizona Wildcat campus?
It is. I'm actually on a university campus, not that university, but yeah, I work there and then I spend my weekends back up where I originally came from, where I moved to originally. So yeah, it's very close.
So yeah, back in the day, I was not a fan of Arizona Wildcats because they had Lute Olson as their coach, and they beat my beloved Tar Heels. It all comes back to college basketball. I know some people are like, really, Neil? Let's move on. Go see a counselor. Well, maybe today you can help me move on from that. So,
Today I can help you.
Yeah, in your private practice. I don't know what you charge, but maybe put me on the couch and see if you can help diagnose this shoe obsession and Carolina obsession that I have. But help me with this, because as I said that people don't get to hear prior to show, which is always kind of fun. I always like to tease that, like we have this deep conversation that they don't get to hear. So maybe one day if I have a Patreon, we'll release those, but probably not. But as I was saying, your story is intriguing to me because I remember this story when I was in high school, and it might have even been junior high. But we read this book, and I think it's by S.E. Hinton. And I think the book is The One That Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, right? Jack Nicholson plays in the movie as one of the key characters. But they had like straight jackets, they had this padded room, they had all this stuff. And you have an experience that was that type, not that type specifically, but a type of experience like that. And what you were telling me pre-show is that this psychiatric ward is nothing like that is portrayed in the movies, right?
Correct. Well, the one that I was on. So it just depends on your level of care, the care that's needed by the patient. So the one that I was on was an adult locked unit. Granted, and we had all kinds of room for different diagnoses. However, no straitjacket, because I was calm when I came in. So again, it just depends on the level of care that's needed for the patient coming in. But no straitjacket, no nurse ratchet, and everybody was very kind and loving. But yes, some of the things that you did see, yes, it's all from movies, but some of that did actually occur. There were straitjackets, there were lobotomies. I mean, those were very much in the past, but you're right. It's still the same type of everything's taken away from you. Everything is, and you are at their will and mercy.
But I guess my question is, Sandra, going back to flying down, taking that Legion flight, right? So imagine if you came to Medford, right? I don't know if you've ever been to Oregon, but let's just pretend for a minute. You come to Oregon, you fly in, and you do your business here in Oregon, and you go to fly home. And for some reason, I somehow get on the flight next to you. I get on the plane next to you, and I sit next to you. What do you think the first thing I'm going to notice about you? What do you think that would be?
Probably my kindness, because I'm going to ask when the person comes by, the flight attendant, did you want something to drink? I won't answer right away. I'll say, did you need something? I tend to do that. I worry about other people or try to be the caretaker of other people. So you're probably going to notice that first about me.
And where does all that come from? That need to be the caretaker of other people. Where does that stem from? Because I think personally, right, like my first inkling, as much as I preach and talk about empathy, sometimes I forget that there really are other people that, you know, I still struggle with putting myself, as I say so often on the show, putting myself in their shoes. That's part of maybe the reason I do this show as therapy, in a sense, to help remind me that I need to do that. But where does that need for you come from?
Sure. That's a great question. And I think it originated because I'm this chocolate colored girl living in Minnesota, where it's blonde, blue eyed, very different. There was no other person of color where I grew up. And that felt odd to me to be singled out and be different. So I know what it feels like to be different. And then as I grow up, I end up working with special needs kids and in mental health because I get that. They either have been bullied or picked on or have felt different. So that resonates with me. I feel that because I've been there. It may not be, I'm going to use your metaphor of shoes. I may not have walked in those shoes, but I've been down that path. I get it. So I think that's where it really comes from just a very young age, feeling different.
Do you think that's what led you into mental health, private practice, this kind of professional kind of atmosphere that you're in currently?
Absolutely. I think that drives my passion because that's part of who I am. So yeah, I absolutely think that's where it came from.
And did you yourself get made fun of as a child? And I mean, you talk about growing up in Minnesota, so now we can talk. One of my favorite places to go. I've never been there either. I just need to probably get out more. But you know, I grew up watching the Minnesota Twins. You know, Kirby Puckett, and you know, you beat the Braves, and I sadly was rooting for the Braves in that series.
Sure.
But my point is that I think for me, that's part of my story of empathy too, right? Is growing up, I never really felt like I fit in. I never really felt like there was a pair of shoes that were designed for me that I could slide into, right? And I think you and I might be, in a sense, kindred spirits in that respect because we have that background. So was there a moment, maybe a launching point where you were like, you know what, enough's enough. I need to start helping people. And how did that happen?
You know what? It's interesting because as a little kid, you don't realize anything other than what your life is like. I'm living in a bubble of I have parents and I have my friends. And then when you get called a name or you're bullied or you're told that you're different, it's like this rude awakening. And it's almost sad because now there's crack in this facade or this bubble of my world that I never realized. And it's like, wait, I'm a different color person than you are. My friends were German and Swedish and whatever their nationality was. And I just took it that I was Mexican. But when someone tells you you're different, we don't want you around here. We don't like your kind. It opens up this whole new world like, whoa, wait a minute. So yeah, everything changes from that point on, and you almost wish you had those glasses on again. However, that made me who I am, and it opened up the whole world, not just of people of color, but people with disabilities or people with mental illness or whatever it might be. So being bullied or being called names, yeah, everybody has their sad story, but what are you going to do with it? And for me, you mentioned a moment. For me, it was kind of like, I don't want anybody feeling like I'm feeling. So I'm going to let them sit at my table in middle school. I'm going to be nice to the person that gets picked on. So not that I was perfect. I mean, I was a kid like anybody else. However, it opened up a whole new view for me that I don't want anybody feeling like I felt.
Do you remember ever going home crying or upset or, you know, if you don't mind sharing, I mean, what kind of things would they call you? Because again, I've never been to Minnesota, so I don't know, but I know it's kind of that Norwegian kind of area. You know, they got the Vikings there, but you know, I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
I know kids can be mean, but
yeah,
I guess how mean were they?
Yeah, and not to say anything against Minnesota because I spent most of my life there, and
Minnesota's a great place. Twin Cities.
Yeah,
nice
and they're wonderful people. I mean, absolutely wonderful, kind and loving. However, in a really small town, and if something is different, people don't know what to do with different. So I'm not blaming them, but kids can be mean, just as you said. So being spick, being called wetback, I don't even know what that means. I just know no one else is being called that, and I've never been called that before, or pointed and laughed to, or said, we don't want your kind. So all these new terms are being thrown at me. I'm not sure what to do with them because I don't know what that all means, because I'm in that little bubble of a world where everybody in my home pretty much looks like me. I go to school and no one looks like me, but we're all from the same neighborhoods and things. And so, yeah, that did not feel good. Of course. So, again, not to say about Minnesota, because it could happen anywhere. And again, I had wonderful memories, wonderful friends. My children were all raised there, and I love the schools that we had them attend and that I worked at. So again, it's not so much associated with Minnesota. It's just when there's things that are different, people aren't quite sure how to handle them.
No, and I think that is 100% accurate, because I think, again, it doesn't matter what state name you want to associate with it. Kids
Sure.
are going to be cruel. Kids are going to be mean. And I think, again, when we see something that's different, we don't know what to do with it. So we try to make light of it, and in making light of it, some people take it too far. For sure, I could totally agree with that.
Right.
That was awesome stuff there. So how does one make the transition? And I know you talked about, like, you didn't want kids to be hurt. You didn't want to be, you didn't want them on the outside looking in, maybe hanging out on the island of misfit toys, right?
Right.
You didn't want to go there. You wanted to go there and really wanted to help those that were, maybe the rejected and the pushed aside and the forgotten about. And so that led you into the line of work that you're in. What keeps you in that line of work that you're in? Because again, for me, and I'm only speaking for myself, which maybe I shouldn't, because we're really wanting your perspective, but what compels you to keep working in that field? Because it can get I would think, very exhausting at times, very challenging at times, and especially constantly trying to work with people that maybe don't want to be helped, that they just want to stay stuck in that different. So maybe speak to that if you're willing.
Oh, absolutely. Because it never ends. I wish I would say, oh, we're all done. I've met everybody's needs and no one else is going to feel different. No one ever is going to feel that they're not worthy. That's not happening. So what keeps me going, and you are right on, it is exhausting, or it can be. And I'm the type of occupational therapist that I don't consider people as a number, or I just go and do my job and then I go home. I carry that is twofold. It makes me a great therapist, but it also can wear you down. So I've learned, because I've done this for a number of years now, I need to take care of me, because if I don't, I'm no good to anybody else. So I make sure when I try to turn it off, I turn it off. I read a lot. I go to movies, well, when I can. I just do things to take care of me so that I can reboot, get back to it the following Monday. And that's been super important. And I tell my clients that as well. Take care of you, invest in you so that you can go in for the long haul.
Yeah, I think that's important, right? To take care of us. We know that conceptually, right? I know that in my head, but there's a huge disconnect between my head and my heart, right? So what kind of thing, I know you talked about going to movies when we can, of course, and reading books and just kind of trying to decompress and relax. But if I'm really struggling with mental health, or I'm not sure even if I have a mental health condition, what kind of advice and tips would you maybe give me or help me maybe to understand if I need to go seek professional help rather than Dr. Google, as a friend of mine so often says?
Yeah, a lot of people go to Google and find out, is this me? Do I see myself on there? I guess the biggest thing is, if you are noticing changes, if you're noticing that I'm not going out like I used to, I'm really not wanting to invest my time with my family and with my friends, or I'm just doing the same thing over, or if you don't see a change, and that has been for a long time. So it's two ends, whether you've changed and you are not the person you used to be, or you've been stuck for quite a long time. I tell people, take a look at your journals. And if you haven't journaled, try journaling. Go out and get a set of paints or get chalk or what, start drawing, doing. And it seems like, okay, why would I do that? Some of my best therapy sessions have been when I tell people, get a coloring book and just start coloring. And if you can, go outside the lines, do something that's different, just different. And I think, if your friends and family are saying, you know what, you're not you anymore, or I haven't seen you in a long time, those are big red flags. So it's interesting, because we take care of our bodies. We get sick or we get a cold or we go to our physicians right away. We have mental illness problems, or we have depression or anxiety, and we think it's shameful. We don't want to go out and seek help. But our mental health is just as important as our physical health. Absolutely. They go hand in hand. So it's not a shameful thing. Go seek help. Ask a friend or to talk, or just seek out a counselor or a therapist to talk to.
Yeah, I think so many times, at least in my memory, is there's still such this stigma around mental health, going to a counselor, whatever it may be. And I don't know why that is, because there's no stigma around when you go to the doctor, right? Or you go to the dentist, or you go to the physical therapist.
Yeah.
But there's still this stigma around mental health and like oh, you've been in professional counseling? Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
Like, are you okay? Are you gonna, are you, and I'm not trying to make light of suicide, but people, like, are you gonna kill yourself? Are you having suicidal thoughts? Like, no, I just have problems that I can't get over that I need help with. I'm my hands up. You can't see it because you're not on the Zoom with us, but I went to counseling.
Mhm.
I'm not embarrassed to say that.
That's good.
By the way, though, I used to be embarrassed to say that
Mhm.
until I've sat with a number of your, I will say your colleagues through the years,
Sure.
because we've had a number of mental health professionals on, but I'm not embarrassed to say that anymore. Why are you not embarrassed to say that? Especially since you're in the game, so to speak, you're in the industry, but you're still not even embarrassed to talk about that. Why is that?
Well, for me, I'm going to flip it to when I was a patient. So when I was dealing with depression and anxiety, I would be hit with, and this was not anybody trying to be malicious at all. Have you prayed about it? You maybe haven't prayed hard enough. So then I'm feeling guilt on top of the shamefulness and thinking, well, maybe I haven't prayed hard enough. What's wrong with me on top of feeling depressed or anxious? Now I'm not even praying, right? So for me, I had a number of things going on. And it's interesting because if I had cancer, people are going to be bringing me, sorry, I'm a Minnesota girl. They're going to be bringing tater tot hot dish, or they're going to be bringing things to my home where, because I have depression, it's not contagious. I promise you, it's not contagious, but it is a whole different light than if I had cancer or if I have something physical, an ailment. So I don't have any shame though, because when I went through those times of depression and anxiety, I needed help and I knew I needed help. So because I've been through it, I don't have any reservations saying, yep, I went through it. And then I also hope to share that with not only my students that I teach now, but my clients. There's nothing shameful in it. You need help, and how brave are you to go get help? If you were walking around with a broken leg, yeah, suck it up or pray about it. No. You go get help. You get help because you don't want to be walking on it. So feel the same way about both.
Yeah. And again, I just think if we can eliminate that stigma
Mm-hmm.
from the fact that someone needs mental health, I think we do them a great service in understanding that and having that empathy for them that says, oh, hey, it's okay, right?
Yeah.
And not make it like I was just alluding to, like, oh, what's wrong with you? What's going on? What's happening? Why don't you see the value in your life? And it's like, well, I do. I'm struggling with that right now.
Sure.
And I think if I could just get on a little soapbox, here we go. My own show, I can get on my soapbox. Here it is. I'm going to make it fast. But I think we do a disservice to somebody when we simply say, well, let me just pray for you in that. Let me just pray for you. I'm going to pray for you in that. Do you really go home and pray about that? Honestly, do you? Take that moment and say, you know what? Let me just take you before God right now. Come on, I'm going to pray for you right now. Sandra, I'm just going to do it right now. And that's what we should do, but we don't.
Right.
So, all right. Rant over. All right. Sorry. Rant over. What's interesting about your situation, not only did you walk through it, but you've decided to really write out your story. And to me, there's nothing more powerful when someone sits down and writes out their story and it's like, okay, here's what happened. Because I think when we tell our stories, there becomes power in said story. Would you agree with that as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's almost a cathartic process because you're able to work through it yourself.
So why did you decide to write your story out? Because you wrote a book recently, right?
I did. It's called On the Other Side. Yeah.
Thank you. And the book, I was just going to say that the book is called On the Other Side. And by the way, if you're interested in that book, after she tells you a little bit more about it, you can obviously check that out at our website, opspodcast.com/books that I love. It'll be right towards the top and you can take a look at that. But Sandra, tell us why you wrote the book and what kind of went into that process and why you decided to, because again, I've heard it said there's a story within all of us and sometimes it just needs to come out, right?
Yeah, it really does. And I think the reason I kind of put it out there is a number of people kept saying, you've got to write this. You've got to write this. And I thought, no one's going to be interested. And then I thought back to when I was struggling. I'm feeling super alone. No one's ever gone through this like I've gone through it, which is not true. If I had read something that You can go through it. You had been working on a locked psych unit. You were going through that door. You barely hear it clanging. You pick up your patients. You take them to occupational therapy. You do your sessions, and you drop them back off. That was just commonplace for me, and I love that job. Now, on the other side, I'm on this unit. I'm the person shuffling in my little booties because I can't have my shoes. I'm in the hospital scrubs because I can't have my clothes anymore. I felt like, wow, look at that. There has to be someone out there that can see that. Look, I got through it. I went through all that I did on that locked unit that I used to work on. And now look at the hope that I have and the growth that I have. And if I have touched one person by giving them hope that, yeah, you can do this, then I've done my job. Then that's great. That is super satisfying to me.
So what leads somebody to get to that point? What led you to get to that point where you're not on the outside of the door, you're on the inside of the door, as you talked about? No Converse. I know you said shoes, but I'm inserting Converse in there. No shoes, none of your nice clothes, none of your you couldn't have shoelaces even. I mean, none of that stuff. So what led you to finally, get to that point where you're on the inside, so to speak?
Sure. Being on the receiving end is humbling. Oh my goodness. And I had been through a divorce, which I'm a perfectionist. So no, you make sure all the boxes are checked. You don't have trouble. You don't go through things, which we all do. However, I'd gone through a divorce. I thought I was going to be ruining my kids' lives by having them be part of a broken family. And I remember telling my good friends, if I ever speak about they'd be better off without me, or I don't want to worry my children, or I just think I just don't want to deal with it anymore, that is a red flag for you to make sure that I get help. So that's what happened. I was talking to friends and I said, you know what? I hate to worry my children. I don't want to have them go through this anymore. They came and picked me up and took me to the hospital. And I'm thankful that they did that and heard my words as I told them that if I ever speak that way, then I'm not speaking rationally and I'm going to need some help. And so that's where I got to this very low point that was super dark, and I wasn't able to think rationally.
What do you think would have happened had they not known those red flags, those cues that you had told them about? I'm guessing years earlier, hey, if I ever get to that point, here are the red flags to watch for. Imagine if I'm going to just give a name to somebody, Patty, right? So imagine Patty comes to you and she knows these are red flags because you told them about her for years. You've been friends with Patty for 20 plus years. And Patty hears these red flags. And Patty says, you know what? I know Sandra. I've known her for 20 years. She's fine. She'll be okay. She's just going through a rough patch right now. What do you think would have happened had they not acted the way they acted?
You know what? It's almost scary to kind of go down that road again because I was such at a dark moment. And I remember in my intake, and this is just common, you go to the ER and they do an intake and they talk to you and they ask you, and I ask people this too if they're really down, do you have a plan? Do you have a plan? And then the second question is, do you want to die? Did you want to kill yourself? And it's interesting because had Patty not come to me, I didn't want to die. I didn't say I wanted to die. I wanted to sleep. I also did not want to wake up, but I wouldn't use the words I wanted to die. And I didn't say that, yeah, I want to kill myself. But when she said, did you have a plan? And I did have a plan because I had been on medication for my depression, but I hadn't taken it for a while and I was hoarding it just in case I couldn't deal with things. So yeah, I had a plan. And had Patty not come to my rescue or been there, and I really feel it's a God thing because she was led to come. Well, my two friends were led to come and actually help me and actually listen to those warning signs that we had talked about. Yeah, I could have seen taking those pills. Again, not with the forethought thinking, I want to die. I just want to sleep and I want the pain to stop for a little while. Again, not thinking that far ahead that I didn't want to wake up as well, but I just wanted to sleep and let it all end.
Well, thank God for Patty. We'll air quote that.
Yeah.
Right, because you're here right now. I read in a book a while back, which some people will be like, what? Neil, you've read a book? Yes, I've read books. I can read books. I'm just saying. I know how to read, okay? Despite what you may have seen on Instagram.
And they weren't pop-up. Yeah.
I do know how to read, and they were not pop-ups. Thank you. See? Jumping right in.
Yep.
I love that. But I read in a book once that said, if all you see is your pain, you will never see me. By the way, that's the Shack, in case you're wondering.
Nice.
If all you see is your pain, you'll never see me. So do you firmly believe that if all you ever would see is your pain, you were blocked maybe? And you mentioned, believing in God. Do you believe that pain was so strong and so intense that it was really blocking your view of God? And if so, maybe speak to that.
Yeah, I really do, because believing in God is to my core. And when you're not thinking logically, rationally, you really aren't the same person. So believing in God is part of who I am. I really wasn't me during that time. It is so dark. I knew he was out there somewhere, but when you cannot see through that darkness, you lose that hope, you lose that belief, you lose really what God meant to you in all that. And I think you're right. It is a block. So again, you're not the person you normally are, and you also can't see what you normally could see, if that makes any sense.
No, I think it does. So how do you get out, I guess? How do you get out of that locked door, no shoelaces, no cool shoes, nothing? How do you get out of that situation to where we are now talking together today?
I spent some time on that locked unit. And you're going to therapy, you're talking about the painful stuff. You are digging into it. You are just buckling up, and you got to talk. So, and it's interesting because when I entered that unit, and I know because I've worked those units, the rooms closest to the nurses' stations are those are either have behavior problems, they're violent, or they're on suicide watch. And guess where my room was? Right next to the nurses' station. So I'm like, okay, here we go. Let's buckle up, and we're going to get into this. So I knew what was coming. Again, I wasn't prepared for being on that other side, but my goodness, they saved me. They saved me. Because what we were just talking about being blocked, it's like they chipped away at that wall that was blocking seeing God and coming to me again, blocking even seeing myself as me again. So going through all that really helped me. Not only the group sessions, and I, as an OT, had to go to OT. So it was just like, okay, take that hat off. That's not who you are. You are patient, Sandy, now. So it was super important, because you have to invest in you and try to find you again. And for me, trying to find God again. So not that I had lost him, but I like your analogy of it was really kind of a block. I had to kind of bring down those walls and try to see him again.
Well, I just know that from past guests who have said that there literally is this wall.
Mm-hmm.
One described it as a hole, like a rabbit hole. Another one described it as this presence, almost like a heavy weighted blanket.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I myself, I'm not going to lie. I've walked those walks too, where there's just so much darkness, and I can't seem to see past it. Mm-hmm. And to me, there's nothing worse than that. And I think too many times, as I've said, we just ignore it, thinking it'll just somehow go away. And the reality is it's not going to go away until you really spend time, as you said, doing the work. So that's good stuff there.
Right.
So how has your work in the private practice and in the professional ranks, what has been the most rewarding part about your work in that?
I think for me, it's when I see the aha moments. I'm working with a client and they're struggling with either depression, anxiety, ADHD. Just a number of different issues, eating disorders. And I see that aha, like I've reached them. And it could be weeks, it could be months. But when they're finally on board, because it's hard, it's really hard to do the work and try to repair some of that damage, because you have to go in and kind of go back in your history and kind of really work and repair some of that stuff. But you've got to face it. And that's not comfortable. It's just not. So when I see the aha, like, or when the tears start flowing and the nod starts happening, then you're there. You're getting the work done. So that's huge, because you're actually seeing some metamorphosis happening. Some change is about to become real for them.
So I'm trying to figure this out, because for me, suicide is such a prevalent thing in our country.
Mm-hmm.
I think COVID may have even enhanced those,
Sure.
numbers, because people are locked up, isolated, feeling alone, separated from their community, their people, their core, their, whoever, their patties, as we made up a name, they're people, right? But what's interesting to me is suicide is still happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've heard it even said growing up in the church, and I've heard it even said through other channels and avenues, that suicide is very selfish. That is the most selfish act we can do to our community, to our people, to whatever. Now, I don't know how to say this exactly, but do you agree with that statement, or do you think that there's more? I guess, is suicide ever really the answer? I don't know how to say that exactly, except other than to say that. Is there other ways? Because again, I don't know where someone is. I don't know what mindset we're going to find somebody in, or what mindset somebody's going to come into listening to today's episode. But I'm curious about this, because I think from a professional standpoint, and so maybe we'll lean into that hopefully pretty heavily here. But I think so many times I hear, well, this person committed suicide. There had to be another way. Why does it have to get that far, do you think, for someone in their life? Could you help me with that?
Sure. There's a number of different things I want to touch upon here, because you bring up quite a few things. Okay, so you started off saying suicide has been termed as selfish at times.
I have heard that, yes.
Yeah, and I have too. I will say, for the majority of the people that I've worked with, it is not a selfish act. And again, I can't judge, and I don't want to judge anyone, because everybody's pain is pain, and it is real. It is real. So I will say, though, the majority of people that I talk to that have either committed or have attempted suicide have said, I don't want my parents, I don't want my spouse, I don't want whoever it may be to worry about me anymore. I don't want them struggling with having to put me in treatment again. So I would say the majority, it's not a selfish thing. It's that they have come to a point, and again, it could be a chemical imbalance. It could be just things have been tough for a long time, and I don't see a way out. I don't personally, I'm going to say for myself, I don't see it as selfish, because I was also from that camp that I just didn't want my family to be worrying about me anymore. And it was really for the benefit of my children, that they could be so much better if they didn't have me as their burden. So for me, it wasn't a selfish thing. And again, majority of my clients, it is not a selfish thing at all. However, there is a biological component to this, that once people are on meds, again, you'd go in and get a cast if your leg was broken. So if there is a chemical imbalance, or if it's hereditary, or whatever it could be, that's where you start from. If there's meds to kind of level things out and help you, that's where you go. Do I ever think suicide is the answer? Absolutely not. We want you around. I don't care who you are, what you've done, no judgment at all. Let's help you. So no, I think there's a number of resources out there. It's taking that step, though, and we're making full circle here, having to combat that stigma of asking for help. Because am I weak that I can't deal with this? Everybody else is going through origin or whatever it is to be handling it. What's wrong with me?
But no, I think you're absolutely right. 100% correct. And I appreciate you sharing what you shared, because I think so many times, whether it be you're starting a new career, whether you're starting a new whatever, anything new in life, does require that first step. And sometimes that step is so high. Sometimes that step is so tall. But you have to take it. And I love what you said too, because there's so much value in people. And they have to know that. People have to know that they are valuable. Small story, but I talked to a guy. I was working in collecting car payments. And so I asked him, I'm like, dude, are you okay? And he's like, why do you care? And I was like, well, here's the thing. Like, I just care about people. I just want to make sure you're okay, right? And so, I hang up the phone, and I just, before I hung up the phone though, I was like, hey man, I just want to let you know you have value. He's like, yeah, sure. You just want my car payment. That's why I have value. I'm like, no, more than that. You have value. Like, you're important. You might not be important to me personally, but you have value. He's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Hangs up the phone. Well, Monday comes, because it's like Friday. Monday comes, and my voicemail is like lit up, like 5-6 messages, couple of hangups, a lot of hangups, and it's the same number. And I'm like, okay. So I searched the number, ended up not finding it. And I'm like, I don't know who this is. So just me being me, I call the number back, right? Most people would. And I call the number back, and this guy's like, hey, I need to know, did you talk to so-and-so on Friday? I was like, well, sir, to be honest with you, I talked to a lot of people. You're going to have to be more specific. Can I get a last name? And he's like, yeah, here's the last name. So I look it up, and I was like, yeah. I talked to him. I'm like, who are you? Because, you're not on the account. He goes, yes, I am. Go, 5 pages down. I'm authorized to talk about it on this account because there's legal reasons and all that, right? So I look down. Sure enough, end up finding out it's the dad of this guy. And he said, what did you say to my son? And he's like, mad. And I'm like, well, sir, I said a lot of things to him. You're going to have to be more specific. He goes, top of his lungs, almost screaming at me, what did you say to my son? And I was like, well, and then I was like, it had to be that. And I was like, well, I told him he had value. I told him he was important. He may not be important to me, but he's important to someone else, right? And he says, you know what happened? And I'm thinking, oh no. And I just had this eerie feeling in my heart, right? I'm like, oh no. And I said, sir, tell me what happened. And he said, well, his mom and I went over to his house because we were worried about him. We kept calling him and kept calling him and kept calling him, and he didn't answer. And I was like, yeah, okay, please tell me, like, get to the end of the story. Fast forward. I'm like on pins and needles here. And so he says to me, he gets to his son's house. His son is still there. His son is still living. And he looks at his son's phone. And I was the last number besides them that had talked to him. And then this is where it gets crazy, like goosebump weird, right? His son said he had every intention of taking his life until I talked to him. And his dad now is in tears. And he said, I just had to ask the person who had talked to him why you said what you said. And I said, well, sir, I have a daughter. At that time, she was really young. But I said, I have a daughter. And I said, I would just hope one day, if my daughter's ever in that spot, that maybe a guy on a phone taking a car payment from her, doing his job, cared enough about her for just a moment to care about her, to speak truth into her life. And he said, I can't thank you enough. I believe my son is here because of what you said. And that was the first time in my life that I ever remember feeling my words have power. And it really, even to this day, like as I'm retelling that story to you, even to this day, it still takes me back to that moment, that desk, that if I had never said, hey man, you have value, you're important, if I never had felt that in my soul to respond to him, I mean, who knows what could have happened? I don't know. And so obviously I'm not a therapist. I'm not doing what you do, but to me, there's got to be such a reward in what you do, right? There's just got to be those moments in life that you're like, you know what? Yeah. So long story to lead up to this question, but have there been those victory moments? I know you can't share because of HIPAA and all that other stuff, but have you had those victory moments? And if so, what did it feel like for you? Because again, I'm just a dude and taking car payments back then, but to this day, it still feels pretty awesome that I've got to play a part in that person's hopefully recovery. So speak to that if you wouldn't mind.
No, that's huge. That's huge. And I will say, I think everybody is a therapist because you never know what's going to come into your path. And exactly what you said. I mean, that's powerful. That is powerful because what you could have done is ignored that feeling and just said, it's fine. I'll call him on Monday, see if he's got the car payment. And he may not have been there on Monday. So everybody has that within them that you just got to listen to that small voice or that feeling in your gut. So yeah, it feels great. However, it may take months, weeks, years to get there, but you can't give up. You can't give up because it's in there somewhere. And so if you can tap into that and work with them and build that trust that you are there, you got them. And there are days where they're saying blank you and hanging up or saying, I don't want to talk to you or calling names or whatever. And you show up and they'll say, I'm so sorry or what. That's in the past. We're starting today. We're fresh today. Let's talk. So that's important. And there are times where I am touched. And so I will share that with them. And it's about building relationships and being there for another human being. So yeah, there are times where, yay, we worked so hard on this and they're doing better, or they've mended their relationships with fathers or mothers or spouses or whatever it might be that was really hurtful from their past, or feeling good about themselves and feeling worthy again. All those are wonderful high top moments. But the road to get there, my goodness. But to know that you're going to show up, you're halfway through the mountain, you get brought back down, it doesn't matter. You're there for them. So that's the huge part, is the day-to-day. Yes, you get the high top moments from time to time, but it's the being there every day and the look on their face when no one else has maybe been there day-to-day and they got their back. That's rewarding. That feels good that you came back. Of course I'm going to come back. We got to finish this. Okay, finish what you were talking about before we ended last time, blah, blah, blah. You move on. But you're there for that other person. So whether you're titled as a therapist or titled as just being a human being caring for someone else, we all got it in us to help others.
Yeah, I hope that's true.
I have to believe it.
I hope that's true, that we have it in us to help other human beings. I really hope that's true. Because I think so often we're so fast-paced, we don't really take the time to slow down, stop, and really ask people hard questions. Mm-hmm. I've had friends and even past guests come on and say, Neil, it's really awesome that you came on, let me come on the podcast, but man, you asked some really hard questions. You asked some stuff that really makes me think. And I'm like, well, we need to think. We need to slow down. We need to really stop and ask. My grandmother used to say, stop and smell the roses. I mean, that's the classic cliche that we love to say maybe, but
sure.
But I think what value is it in stopping and really asking people how they are, where they are? I mean, not only from a therapist standpoint, but from a human being standpoint. Why do you think, again, that's such a value and we need to do more of that?
Yeah, I think it's important because we're looking outside ourselves. We get stuck in ourselves so much. And I think we feed that. It's about me, and it's about me. When you take that shift and look towards somebody else and how that fills you up, it's twofold. It not only helps that other person, but it helps you to think outside your own self for a little while. And there's beauty in that. My goodness, you get such a thrill when you help other people. And it's great to get things for yourself. It really is. But when you are helping someone else, that's huge. That's huge. And that will last for days. Yourself, you might go, I need something else the next day and the next. But you help somebody else and that stays with you for days and days and days. Well, look at your story. It stays with you. And that's something you'll never forget.
Oh, yeah. That's one that'll stay with me forever for sure. How can people get a hold of the book? And again, why is it so important that somebody gets this book in their hands? Those are the questions I always love to ask.
I think it's important to be aware of what you're going through. So for me, I had to make sure that I was in a place that I was ready to share my story. I was ready to put it out there because you could be opening yourself up to criticism, judgment. And I had to just think about, could I be helping someone by sharing these words? And you're right, words are very powerful. So it'll be on Amazon, hopefully by February. That's what I'm working toward.
So Sandra, how can people get in touch with you? Because I firmly believe you have just this amazing ability to help people. And that is, of course, your heart's desire is to help people. So right now, how can people, if they're hearing you and they're like, man, what she's saying is really resonating with me, it's really kind of rising some thoughts up inside me that I may need some help with, how can people get in touch with you? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I would say the best way is probably either check my website out, which is sandyraycoach.com. So it's SANDI raecoach.com. That's the easiest. And then there's going to be links on there for books and things. But if they want to send me an email and just contact me that way and either set up a private session or just get to know a little bit more about what they might be looking for in terms of help or books or whatever, that's also raysandra63 at yahoo.com. Raysandra63. So yeah, either way is great. I would love for them to check out my website and just take a look at what I have for resources for them.
See, and I think that's so important right now because, again, we're still kind of coming out of this pandemic kind of time frame. And so with Zoom and other, technologies that are video related, for you as a health person and really kind of advocate for people that are struggling in these storms of life, this whole world is now opened up to you. And so it's a great way for people to get connected with you, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely it. And I think the reason I added the coach on to my website was because I'm not only an occupational therapist, but I'm also a teacher, a professor, a book writer. So I'm really coaching people through life in different areas, whatever their needs are. So that's really important to me to make sure that people know that.
Absolutely. And so if you didn't get that written down, because I know you might be folding laundry at this point, you might be doing the dishes, who knows, you might be out on a run. Don't worry, I got you taken care of. Just check out our show notes. All of that information will be listed down below. And so I just want to say, go check that out. If you're feeling like that's rising up inside you, don't let those feelings just sit locked behind your door. Let them out and let Sandra be a great source for that. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on and giving us some amazing insight, not only into your life, but the reason behind the book, the reason why you kind of get up and get motivated in the morning to help people. So I want to give you a final thought. Like, what would you say to somebody right now before we play our fun game that we like to end the show with? But if somebody right now is hearing this, they're like, you know what? I'm really struggling. I'm really, I got this going on and that going on, and I just got laid off, back at COVID, and I'm still trying to find a job, and that's where my identity was. And, my kids are driving me crazy because they're homeschooled now, and I have all this stuff that's piling up on top of me, and I'm just trying to juggle everything, and I'm word vomiting right now. But what would you say to them? What would you say to that person right now that may be out there really struggling and needing your help or needing someone's help?
Yeah. First of all, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Take that first step. And remember, you are worth it. You're worth it. You absolutely are. Whether you believe it or not, trust me. And you don't know me. You don't know me from anybody else. Trust me, you're worth it. So, and there's a purpose. Everybody has a purpose. You are made for so much more than you even realize. Take a deep breath. Take that first step. Reach out. And then remember, you are worth it.
Yeah, I love that so much. I mean, that just fits right into what I try to tell people all the time, that they are worth it. They're worth it. I even add into that you're worth somebody dying for you. Like Jesus died for you. That's how much worth it you are. So whether you subscribe to that or not, you need to maybe remember that and maybe go away and learn what that means. But Sandra, we're going to play our game together. So I know, being in the mental health aspect of things, there was probably some health classes along the way, right?
Sure.
Okay. So you're fully aware that we have 5 senses, right? You're fully aware of that, right?
Correct.
Okay. Phew. Just checking. All right. So we play this game called Senseless. It involves our senses, and then there's a wild card. So I have this amazing cup. It is not an Arizona Wildcats cup or the college that you teach at, but it is my favorite university, and it is my favorite cup. So I'm going to roll because you're still in Arizona. You haven't flown to Oregon yet, which, by the way, you're welcome anytime. Welcome.
Thank you.
So I'm going to roll on your behalf, and we're going to see what number you got. And here we go. You got this number. It's a number 3.
Number 3.
Yeah. So here we go. So number 3 is this. What is your favorite thing that you have ever smelled?
Oh, my favorite. I'm a mom of 3. It is a freshly diapered Johnson & Johnson talcum powdered little baby behind. So remember, it's freshly diapered. I don't want to smell any smelly ones. So that talcum powder and that babe. Oh my goodness.
Usually people say like cookies, brownies,
Nope.
some kind of pastry of some sort, but you're going a baby's bottom.
A clean one.
Bottom,
Don't forget. Clean bottom. Mm-hmm.
I love that. I never know what somebody's going to say. That's what I love most about the game. So it's fun. It's just kind of a fun way to end the show. So, Sandra, just want to say thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. And I just cannot get over, again, that you've walked through so much pain, so much torment, so much trials, but yet you're able to sit here today and say, you know what? There is hope on the other side, right?
Absolutely. There is.
Right. I love that so much. So, guys, I just want to end our show with just this simple thought, and that's this. If you're really struggling right now, if you're hearing this and you're like, you know what, a lot of what Sandra's saying resonates with me. Resonates maybe not with you, but maybe a friend or another friend or, whoever, maybe somebody in your circle. I'm going to ask you this question. Have you gone to them and say, listen, there's help for you. Let me help you take that first step. Because Sandra had some great friends along the way that recognized some red flags in her life. If you're hearing those red flags from your friends, do them the favor. Go get them some help. So let me ask you, do you have that person in your life that when everything is bad and wrong, you can go to them? Because if you don't, maybe it's about time you found that friend. And I know friends aren't something you can just go down to Walmart or Costco and pick them up on aisle 6. I get that. It takes time, it takes trust. But find somebody today that you can really trust in and really pour into. That's my challenge to you this week as we wrap up. So guys, just want to remind you of this. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Want to thank Sandra again one more time. And thank you guys so much for listening. And stay tuned till next week when we walk in other people's shoes. Thank you so much for joining us on Other People's Shoes. As you know, I am your host, Neil Matthews. Want to say thank you again to Sandra for joining us today, talking about some tough stuff. I don't know about anybody else. Anytime we get deep into somebody's story and we really have to unlock those proverbial doors, it can be quite a challenge, not only as an interviewer because you're not sure where to go, but definitely as a guest. Like, how much do you share with this total stranger? But I thought Sandra did a sensational job of sharing her story and really helping those who may be still locked behind that door. And let me tell you, there is a key to get out. And I believe Sandra did a great job pointing us back to the ultimate locksmith who can break out of any lock. Just saying. Wonder who that is? Ask me about that. Speaking of asking me about things, let me tell you, next week's guest comes to us from a friend of mine, a very good friend of the show, Sean McCoy, referred us to this gentleman. Let me tell you, he is more than just a smile. And in fact, here's his crazy story. Here's a sneak peek of next week's episode.
Those shoes were his prized possession. And in his casket, when I went to visit him, they were sitting next to him with his baseball hat. And out of all the shoes that I've ever had, and listening to your episode yesterday, it was like this kind of God wink moment of saying, hello, don't forget, shoes aren't, like, there is a pair of shoes out there that you know exactly where they are. They're right here on Highway 59.
That is right. We're going to be sitting down with a very awesome man. Let me tell you, Warren is fantastic. Warren, you're going to find out in this episode, he's modeled with some big name people. Let me just drop one for you. Maybe you've heard of this guy, Ashton Kutcher. Anyone? Hand up on that one. So stay tuned for next week's episode to really hear more. OPSpodcast.com, of course, is the place to be to listen to that. You, of course, can hear past, present, and future episodes there. And if you would love to connect with me as much as I would love to connect with you, of course, please leave a voicemail, drop us a line on our connections page, and we will get in touch with you because I would love to hear from you. And if you'd like to follow us on the social medias, you can, of course, do so at OPS Podcast Show under Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And just, of course, remember this before I let you go. When you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Join me, as I said, right back here next week as we walk in other people's shoes.